I actually recorded this video once, but I didn't like how the first one turned out, and I wanted to go a little more in depth, so I am back again. Okay, there was a car going past. Welcome back to the 5th MaskDevlog. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing the level progress I've made over the past month or so. I was working on the first level, which was a cave level. Weird because it's a game with inside of a pyramid, but it relates to the story, so just bear with me. I don't want to go too in depth into the lore, but I'll save that part for when the player plays the game, so I'm just going to give some surface background. To simply put it, essentially the player's rope breaks while descending downwards into the cave, which leads to the pyramid, so there's no way going back. I don't want to go too into depth, but that's pretty much it so far. Now, I didn't want to go straight into the pyramid, so I decided to have a prologue level, which was going to be these caves. And these caves were also going to serve as a tutorial level for the player to learn the basic mechanics and ropes of the game as well. In this level, you'll only be fighting 2 enemies that will be placed a few times within the level, so the player can learn the ropes of the game. It won't be too difficult, assuming you are a new player to FPS games. You'll also find some pickups like masks and mana potions, but I won't go too in depth into those in this video. These tutorial caves have a few POIs or points of interest within the caves that the players can explore, primarily being the garden area, the city area, and the ghoul camp area. There's also the entrance towards the pyramid, but I haven't even modeled a door yet, so ignore that. Now, how did I make these caves, you ask? I'll be going over the process of how I made these caves in this next part.
Where the fuck my blunt? Where the fuck my cut? Where the fuck my
I started off by placing these massive cubes everywhere. These massive cubes were used as floors, walls, pillars, and other massive structures that I might place around the caves. I also used a little capsule to reference the size of the player so I don't make the caves too big or too small, so if you ever go about this kind of process, I recommend doing the same thing. Have a reference for the player so you know the scale of the caves. Then after about 3 or 4 days, painfully just blocking out this cave, and it took me forever for some reason, I don't know why. I went about it super slow. I then went onto the Quicksale bridge and got some sandstone cave walls and floors to use for my level. Before just placing these into my level, I did 3 things first. I simplified the mesh so it could have this low poly look. I remeshed it so it could not have any smoothness towards it because it would look weird with smoothness. And then I pixelated the texture so it could have the retro look towards it. Then after doing that for both of these objects, I then first did the floors. The floors were really easy. They were just replacing the floor, of course. Then I did the walls. Now the walls, you don't want to have patterns within your caves because nature is all random. So I made sure I rotated my walls slightly off a little bit and I offsetted them a little bit, whether that be forward, backwards, up or down, to give them this random look that nature has. After that, for a while I was wondering why my caves looked so weird. Then I realized it was the lighting that looked horrible. I don't know if I'm just horrible with Lumen or I'm just bad at Unreal Engine in general, but I can never get Lumen working properly for the first time at least. There's always black objects within the Lumen scene that take forever to debug for me. So I eventually just disabled it because I couldn't get it working in this project. Other projects I have got it working before, but I didn't feel like bugging with it forever. So after I disabled Lumen, I did a little bit of research on why the bottom of my objects were just appearing all black. I made a temporary solution by making my material slightly emissive so it would glow and then the bottom parts wouldn't be as dark. But after a while I figured out it was actually just the normal maps. I had no normal maps.
Yes sir, yes sir.
I felt like my caves were still lacking a bit, so I wanted to spice them up a little bit. After looking on Google Images at sandstone caves for a little bit, I noticed that these caves have other debris and foliage scattered around within them. I decided I would import some grass, vines, fern, rocks, and pebbles to spice up my caves a little bit to give them a more natural look. But instead of just drag and dropping them from the Quicksale bridge, I did the same thing as I did before. I simplified, remeshed, then I pixelated the textures. Now that I had this retro look to them, so it turned out nice. I wanted to add some support beams to make these caves feel worn and traveled in. Then I made a wood texture. Then afterwards I simply just used a cube and scaled it appropriately to make beams. Then I also wanted to spice up the caves a little bit more, so I looked around a little bit on Google Images at some other caves. These caves had lighting towards them, not just natural lighting, which I'll get towards. They had torches and other things that make the cave visible, of course. So I went into Blender and made a horrible torch model, but it doesn't matter. It's a retro FPS. Then after that, I watched a few Niagara tutorials to make a flame particle for Unreal Engine 5. Threw that onto the torch, added some bloom, and here we are. I also made a water texture inside of Unreal Engine. It took a little bit to learn how to make water inside of Unreal, especially making it look good because I have access to better reflections now since I'm not on Unity anymore. But after several tutorials thanks to some helpful channels, I made the water texture. And I made one more model inside of Blender, which was a stalagmite. The stalagmite was pretty easy to make, it's just a spiky stone I guess. I made a few variations of them so it didn't look too bland, and I also flipped it upside down to make a stalactite. Then I placed these around the level using the foliage system inside of Unreal Engine 5. And I placed a few as static meshes so I can scale them massively. Now that I had all of these assets ready and actually placed a few of them within the levels to test them out, I decided to fully flesh out the level now. I started off by placing things in the halls that would connect into the POIs of the level. I placed grass, rocks, stalagmites, stalactites, some pebbles, some wood debris, just to decorate the level a little bit. And I repeated this all the way throughout all of the halls pretty much.
Yes, sir.
After doing that for a lot of the halls, I decided to go on about the POIs now. Now, there are a few of them within this level, a few smaller ones, but I'll list off the most notable ones. Starting off with the garden.
Where the fuck my blunt? Where the fuck my cut? Where the fuck my reed?
The garden is a mini overgrown cavern area where the bridge lies and some water runs through. Inside of this garden, there are 2 hills, a massive tree, and a few stalagmites to block off some paths. The garden also is a hub for one of the bonfires of this level, so that's why it's a pretty important location to this area. It serves as a safe area for the player to learn about bonfires and save zones within this level. There's also a crack in the roof above the massive tree, just to give it a little more decoration, and there's a bunch of vines on top of the roofs. That's pretty much it for the garden area. I'll go on to the camp next. Now, the camp is a POI where a lot of ghouls reside within this level. Here you may see a few of them beating up some of the mummies. That's a future feature. It isn't even a thing in the game right now.
Daddy, chill.
Hanging around a mask that you need to get, and just, you know, it's an area where you fight the ghouls and learn the game.
Yes, sir.
The design of these camps were actually inspired by some of the camps you would see in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I really like the design of those camps inside of those games, so I took some inspiration from those and put them inside of this. The design of this camp is a little bit different from the rest of this cave. I wanted it to have this abandoned, overgrown, run-down look, I suppose. Inside of this area, you'll see a couple objects like boxes, barrels, benches, wheel carts,
Yes,
and a few
sir.
other things
Yes,
that I don't
sir.
remember right now.
Yes, sir.
Like I said before, one of the masks that the player needs to get is within the center of this area. So you'll have to fight off a bit of ghouls, and this will serve as the first test for the player. Depending on which way you go, of course, this could be the first or one of the 3 first tests for the player. Alongside of the edges of this camp area, you will see some higher up areas that some ghouls will also jump down from and attack the player. If it wasn't obvious enough within the first encounter, this will be used to showcase the ghouls' agility and speed versus the mummies when fighting the player. Alright, enough of that area. On to the final area, which is the city. Now, the city was pretty simple. Actually, I thought it was going to be a lot harder. I could always change it up in the future, but this is what I have for now. The city is pretty much 2 homes placed around everywhere.
Yes, sir.
One being the windowed home and one being the doored home. You cannot enter these. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, within the city, there are a few bridges up top. On top of these bridges will be a few ghouls that will jump down and attack the player. And on the ground there will be some mummies that will also try to attack the player. In the center of the city there will be a mask that you need to collect. And once you collect this mask, ghouls will spawn in front of some of the doors in the city. The city is decorated in this abandoned, old-fashioned sense. You'll see vines hanging down from the roofs. The walls are made of sandstone. There are no windows and there are no doors to showcase this abandoned look. My main inspiration from this was, I think I'm recalling it right, but Black Ops 2 Buried on zombies. But yeah, that's about it for this devlog. To be honest, I have somewhere to be, so I'm just gonna end this right here. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
2 things I ain't ever seen. A nigga that beat a gun and bitch I need. If I go wrong, I'm taking your funds, yeah, bitch I need it. Yeah, you the whole book on how to get rich and you ain't even read it. Jennifer, my bitch is a honey, my bitch is a boy.